those of you who've just joined us, which is anybody who's joined us, you've just missed out. We just saved you the luxury of 22 minutes of reminiscence about Western Springs, LaGrange Park, and LaGrange. You're listening to Lost and Found and Rewound. Fast forward episode. Now I got to get this right. I got to get this right because, and I'll tell you why in a second. Oh, shit. What episode is it?
I already got really confused.
It's 1.2.5.
Yeah. So yesterday I was doing research and I was like, okay, I got to listen to the next episode. And then I listened to the third episode. But we're not talking about the third episode. We're going to talk about what's going to be on the third episode, but we're reacting to listening to the second episode again. So it's all mixed up in my mind. And then I listened to the second episode. So now I'm super confused.
My brother-in-law heard me say that the last fast forward was episode 1.5, and he corrected me on that. I forget what the correction was.
Yeah, you said 1.5 and it's 1.1.5 because if you're using version numbers, if with the assumption that there's a season, right? So season 1, episode 1, and then there's episode 1.5.
Right. And we've only committed to doing one season, but that's that coding brain, right? As you make things extensible, you don't ever want to sort of paint yourself into a corner. Yeah. So. So you do your numbering system as if there could be 9 seasons, or I guess it can go up, right? It could be infinite amount.
Yeah.
Sure.
If we learn how to live forever. Of course, there aren't any more movies, so we'll eventually run out of things to talk about.
That's true.
I had some notes on the last episode I wanted to share. We talked about Soul Asylum having a lot of songs about trains.
We did.
And they only have 2.
What?
Yeah. We said they had a lot of train songs. I only found 2. Tied to the Tracks and Runaway Train were the only 2. I went through their entire catalog.
Did you go through the lyrics, though?
No, I didn't go
I
through
think
the
he
lyrics.
mentions trains in it at least once a record.
Okay,
So
I'll trust you.
Next fast forward, you're going to have to do that research. You're just going to have to crunch all of their lyrics. You can do that.
There's probably a way to do that.
Yeah, sure.
Probably a way to do that. I also went through, my claim that they only had one complete album. I did go back through While You're Out, and I was right about that one. There's a lot of filler on that record. There's there's some of their best songs on that record, but there's a lot of filler on that one too.
Yeah, you're probably right. I used to think that New Day Rising by Husker Du was a perfect album, but then I listened to it and it was like, what are these 3 songs at the end? And I realized that I ran out of time on the cassette I had for it, so I cut off. I edited the album, so I always listen to my cassette version of it, and so my opinion of it, it's still a great album, but it was like, it's got too many songs on it.
I enraged some of my friends in high school because I had made I had Double Nickels on the Dime by Minutemen, the double record, and I made a cassette copy for one of my friends of that, and I think I left off the covers, was it Steely Dan and
Mr. Dr. Wu?
Yeah, I was like, I just left it off. I was like, I'm not going to record this whole record, and I just left that off. And like about a year or 2 later, they I don't know, longer than that, like one of them bought it on CD when it finally came out, like a couple of years later, and it was like, there are these other songs, and it was like they realized it was this. They traced it back to this cassette. They both had. A few of them had copies of this cassette I'd made from one of my friends, and it was like, it was like I had.
You cheated them.
It was worse
Censored.
than that.
Yeah, it was
censored.
censored.
Yeah, that's the word I was thinking of. And it was
there's a Van Halen song on there, right?
I probably liked that one. I was like, I left that on.
A Creedence Clearwater Revival song too, right?
Yeah,
that's live.
But I just left off like 1 or 2 songs, and it was like they were mad. Yeah.
But you gave it to them for free, right? So it's not like you were cheating them out of.
Yeah.
Well, tell them I thought the CD was missing. Isn't that one of the ones where the CD wasn't long enough to include the whole record, so they had to exclude a song or 2?
Wow.
That's possible. Yeah. I remember, one of those early CDs I had that were the first 80-minute CD or something. It was one of those indie rock CDs that was super long. They somehow managed to get everything on it. I can't remember which record that was.
Let me see if I had any other notes here. Oh, I just did. When Rick says he's deciding whether or not what I said was dumb. And then when Rick says interesting, he's decided that what I've said is dumb. So just a rubric for you listening to the show. That'll help you through it. I don't even know if the rubric's the right word. But that's because I'm not too bright.
Interesting. Listening to Adam Buxton, and he has that thing where he does the announcer voice, and then he says, "And I'm going to make strange noises while you tell us about this." And he does the And I realized listening to that episode, I was like, "Oh wow, I do that a lot."
I watched Half-Wits too,
Oh,
which is the SCTV
oh yeah.
skit. But then I realized that when I watch old Saturday Night Live, like 70s Saturday Night Live, it's not funny. And then when I watch old SCTV, it's still hilarious. So
Yeah.
I don't know how to figure that out.
Yeah, it's like, well, Saturday Night Live is always of the moment, right? And SCTV was, more just funny.
They did stuff of weird, but it was so bizarre anyways. It was like they do stuff from the 50s or just things completely, it wasn't exactly current events.
And it wasn't live, so it had to be funny. It couldn't be pretend funny. Audience, we're just like how you had sitcoms where people are laughing at stupid stuff, right? There's something about live comedy that can you can stretch it quite a bit and actually not be funny. Whereas if you're trying to get a bunch of cameramen, and where did they shoot? Like the early SCTV, they talk about it's not even Toronto. It's like where was it?
Edmonton.
Edmonton. It's like if you can get 3 cameramen in Edmonton to laugh, that's got to be a pretty high bar. You're working really hard.
I've started watching Schitt's Creek, and it's really good.
I love that show. I haven't seen the last season, but it's great. Yeah, just watching Catherine O'Hara and what's his name interact.
Eugene
Levy. Thank you. Yeah.
And his son.
Yeah, and the son, and actually the daughter's in there too. She's
Twyla's the waitress that works at the diner.
Yeah. That's who I mean. That's a Levy. Yeah, I think that's the sister, daughter.
It's nepotism.
Yeah.
There's probably plenty of funny people in Hollywood. I don't know why they have to hire their relatives.
Well, it was Canada.
Yeah, that's right. There's not a lot of people there.
Here we
Rick,
go
what have
again.
you watched since the last time we were all together?
Well, I've got a list. I watched Escape from Alcatraz the other day, regardless of the fact that you know that I have a deep-seated hatred of Clint Eastwood. It's personal. Did we mention Escape from Alcatraz in the Runaway Train episode? We did because And
Best
so I watched
Warden.
that. Jerry Fielding did the music, and the music's really amazing in Escape from Alcatraz, and he was the one who did the music in The Gambler too, The Gambler with James Caan. And so that was really exciting to see all that kind of come together. I watched The Pink Panther Strikes Again. So at some point I mentioned, was that the first episode where the Pink Panther movie where they had a guy who looked like Gerald Ford?
Yeah.
Yes.
And
No, isn't that the one that's a upcoming episode, right? Where we
It
talk
might
about
be. Yeah, I
presidents?
have no
Yeah.
idea. But oh yeah, probably.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
yeah.
It has
But
to happen.
talking
That
about-
episode.
so
has to
maybe I
happen.
should wait to talk about that. But I did Pink Panther Strikes Again. I don't know. I have to watch the other ones, but this is the one I can't believe it has so much stuff in it. Where it's got the parallel bars thing, it's got him floating, it's got him doing the dental thing, nitrous oxide, and his nose melting, and then I'm trying to think of what else, like Dreyfus falling in the water and getting shot in the head with an arrow, like a suction cup arrow, and going insane. It's. I thought all those scenes were from different Pink Panther movies, but it's all the same movie. So that was great.
I've never seen a Pink Panther movie.
Well,
How
definitely
many are there?
there were too many.
Yeah.
Oh, there were a
There's-
lot.
yeah.
Really?
There's
Yeah.
a couple, 2 or 3 good ones and 2 or 3 bad ones, right?
Yeah. I watched a great movie, which I'd never seen before. And again, maybe I should save this. Fistful of Dynamite with James Coburn, which is a Sergio Leone movie. But it's also known as Duck You Sucker.
Right.
And it's got, there's a scene in it, slow motion, 3 people driving in a car in the early 1900s, you know, an old car and the sun kind of coming through the leaves, and their faces light up in different times. And I can't believe Quentin Tarantino hasn't stolen this scene for one of his movies, or someone else hasn't stolen it. It was like so visually arresting that I'm going to have to watch it again. And it's a little later Sergio Leone, so it's before Once Upon a Time in America, and I don't even know if it's dubbed. It must be dubbed, but it's got Rod Steiger is in it, so maybe it's just that they're two English-speaking actors, and so they're not dubbed, maybe. But it feels a little more less weird than the earlier Sergio Leone movies, and it's got the great music. But James Coburn plays a guy who blows things up.
I'll have to watch it. It's called Fistful of Dynamite.
Fistful of Dynamite or Duck You Sucker. It was supposed to be called Duck You Sucker, but it was re-released in America as Fistful of Dynamite to capitalize on Fistful of Dollars because it was not successful. The 16-year-old came downstairs with a DVD and said, "What's this movie? Can we watch this?" And it was Heat.
I watched Heat last time. What were your thoughts on Heat?
It's a long movie, man.
It's really long.
And it was fun to watch it, but it was another thing where it's like, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a great movie, you need to watch it. And then it's like, wow, it's basically a sandwich of 3 set pieces, right? And then you have 2 hours, you know, sort of in between each one, right? Or something.
Natalie Portman slitting her wrists.
Yeah, all that crazy stuff. Yeah, all the family stuff. But I'd totally forgotten. It's on the level of John Voight. Al Pacino's on the level of John Voight in Runaway Train. Al Pacino is so Al Pacino in that movie. The way he goes from 0 to 90 in one sentence, and he's just acting up a storm.
Den of Thieves is sort of a remake of Heat. It's not, but it might as well be, and it's awesome. Like if you're just going in for the macho action set pieces, it's a really great film. It's vapid and it borrows liberally from like every macho action film, but it's really well put together. It's a nice, fun film.
Oh, I have a note about Bud Cort, but I think I talk about Bud Cort in the 3rd episode, this upcoming episode. But Bud Cort is in Heat. Bud Cort from Harold and Maude. He runs the diner that the Allstate guy, what's his name, who played the president on 24.
Oh yeah.
That actor, he's the guy that gets recruited, like right before the heist. Like they're in the diner and Robert De Niro recognizes him. Danny Trejo from Runaway Train, right? As we all know, Danny Trejo from Runaway Train. That's how he's always credited, right? When you talk to someone, says he can't. He's got a tail and can't meet up and can't do the heist, and so they recruit Dennis Haysbert, right? That's his name. And Bud Cort is his awful boss who you only see like a little bit, and then he gets thrown on the floor. But
he's chubby now, right?
Yeah, he's chubby and bald. Yeah. So in The Life Aquatic, right? He kind of looks like that. Is kind of like bald and has a mustache and yeah. What else did I watch? Quick Change.
Yes.
The Bill Murray movie.
Yeah.
Oh,
is it good?
It's been a long time since I saw that. Yeah.
It is amazing with Gina Davis and Randy Quaid and Jason Robards.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna watch. I'm gonna force my kids to watch it. It's so amazing. What did they call it?
Groundhog Day or something. It's before that, but it's like it's a weird, quirky movie that is really funny and it's amazing.
Yeah, it's what did they call it? They called it Dog Day Afternoon Meets After Hours, and that's exactly what it is. And it's Tony Shalhoub. I think that was the first time I ever saw Tony Shalhoub, and my younger son came in and was watching it. It was just like, that poor guy. I feel so sorry for him. It's like Tony Shalhoub is amazing as an immigrant taxi driver who's obviously been horribly beaten. You know, he's come from a country where he's been tortured, and then all of a sudden he's dropped into this crazy, insane situation, and he's so scared and clueless. But in such a beautiful way. It's an amazing movie. I'm going to watch it again tonight. I think I'm going to force my family to watch it. It's so good. And yeah, and so I think it was like Bill Murray and the guy. Like, have you ever seen The Man Who Knew Too Little? I think it's the
Yes.
same. He wrote that movie. It's the same writer. I watched the TV show Upload. I kind of like that. I have some more stuff, but nothing that's interesting.
I think I'm warming up to Midsummer. I do think the horror elements of it don't work, but the whole thing about it being about a breakup is pretty fascinating to me.
Yeah, so
Very
for me, I don't
impactful.
like horror movies. This is more. It's more psychological, right? I have no interest in actual horror, and so for me, yeah, the more psychological, kind of terrifying, or normal, like it's kind of like otherworldly and terrifying, but it's also seems plausible.
Yeah, like Wicker Man.
Yeah,
Jim,
Like
what did
Wicker-
you watch?
exactly.
What,
There's
what did you watch?
Ooh, let's see. I really, I couldn't think of anything I watched. I realized after starting this podcast, it's like the only movies I've seen are the ones I brought up to do for these 4 movies I picked for this podcast. No, but I have been listening to a really great podcast, another podcast by this Irish comedian called David O'Doherty, and it's called Isolating with David O'Doherty, and it's just him. He's on an island, this kind of semi-remote island in Ireland, and he just does a daily podcast, but it's very entertaining. It's a bit Local Hero and Father Ted, just because he's Irish, and it's, which isn't fair just because he's Irish, but it is kind of a semi-remote island. But it's true. He's like taking care. It's like he's on this island with his 80-plus-year-old parents. He's kind of taking care of their They have a family cottage on this remote island, and they just decided to stay on this island for the course of the pandemic. And
wow.
so it's not that remote, It's kind of remote, but it looks very idyllic. It's like, even though it's rough, very wild,
When you said it was unfair to call Father Ted Irish, are you implying that there are priests named Ted that aren't Irish?
No. I mean, unfair to just compare it to Father Ted, just because.
Just
Just
you
'cause
were comparing.
It's an oversimplification of it. Yeah, it's not.
Father
It's
Ted
just
has
some-
an Irish accent, and he's funny, and this guy's funny and has an Irish accent. So therefore,
I think other people have made, like when he said he was doing this podcast, or I seem to remember hearing a reference to it. It was like an immediate reference to Father Ted, because it's like, remote Irish island, being stuck on an island in Ireland, and it's like, but it is kind of but it's true. It's true. It's just his personal podcast. He's doing little half-hour things daily, and in his car, he just goes out to his car, and it's their family vacation cottage on this island. So I'll just go stay here with my parents and
do a podcast.
Yeah. And so he's like, well, I should start doing this. I'm going to be stuck here. So
I was able to find it through, what is it called? Captains or something? It's like some kind of
Second
network.
Captains.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's like a Irish sports podcast network. It's like, I think they mostly have podcasts about football and Irish sports, but they have his podcast is on there too. See, that's the thing. You have to subscribe to get all the episodes, which I'm not going to do because most of the his is the only podcast I was interested in, and it's like, but he does like two or three a week that are free. So, but he does it every day, which is pretty amazing. But it's just, they're short. It's just his little, 20 minutes, half hour, just him talking. But I guess why I like it too is because he's a little bit younger than me, but he's roughly the same age, and he's. I liked cycling when I was a teenager, and he did too. Obviously, he was like my hero. Cycling, beginning like when I got into cycling was, Greg LeMond, and his arch nemesis, kind of rival, was Stephen Roach, who's the Irish rider, and David O'Doherty's hero is Stephen Roach. There's lots of Stephen Roach references, and he was into cycling. David O'Doherty was obviously into cycling as a kid too, and so I identify with that. But he's a really funny comedian. I can tie it into a movie because it reminds me of Slaying the Badger, which is a great documentary that I saw a couple years ago, which is about Greg LeMond and in the late 80s winning the Tour de France and his rivalry with this other writer in that same period with Stephen Roach is Bernard Hinault, who was. But that's a great documentary. It was one of those ESPN 30 for 30 documentaries a few years ago. Slaying the Badger.
We've been watching that Michael Jordan and the Bulls documentary. I know this probably brings back a lot of memories for you guys, right? Huddled around the TV, watching the Bulls games.
I do remember sometimes we'd play a show and no one would show up, and it was because of some basketball thing.
Yeah, why? I should. Something's going on, right? I just in the past couple of weeks, there's been all these Michael Jordan things going on. Is it some kind of anniversary? Have I totally missed?
It's this documentary.
Something.
It's the documentary, I think.
Is it?
Is why? Yeah, I think it's just because of this documentary, and it's the only thing on TV for sports people, right? It's like if you like sports, it's the only thing that's been on TV.
You say that
right?
so derogatorily,
Yeah,
sports people. My daughter and I are having a tremendous time watching it. I will say I was not a sports guy as a young kid. I used to get the crap beat out of me because I was not an athletic child, and I was a terrible athlete. I think we've talked about how I introduced to Rick the concept of just not going to gym during the swim unit, and Rick was like, "I didn't know you could just
don't
skip
understand." Yeah, the way I got
didn't
out
go.
of PE for half a year was I had a broken collarbone. Two guys, while playing flag football, crashed into me on either side and cracked my collarbone. So I got out of PE, but it was because of PE that I had a broken collarbone.
I
Flag
broke
football.
I broke a pinky once on a Nerf ball. That's how because I'm allergic to milk, or I can't digest milk well, so my bones were really fragile. And in addition to being like 6 feet tall and less than 100 pounds, I was just like the most brittle piece of nothing. And so a Nerf football came at my hand too hard. I'm sure some sporty guy whipped it at me and it hit my pinky and broke it. And they were like, "It can't be broken. It's a Nerf football." Lo and behold, it was like a clean break. So yeah, sports were not in the cards for me. But for some reason, I did like the Bulls. And then now I'm addicted to football for some weird reason. Anyway.
Yeah, so the Bullies won.
The Bullies won, yeah.
They changed you.
I made a commitment.
You didn't hold fast to who you were.
Right. Well, there was a point in time in my life where I decided that I wanted to become normal. And I thought that by becoming a voracious consumer of sports was actually going to make me a normal person. And then my friend Matt pulled me aside and he goes, "You realize that the way you enjoy sports is abnormal, right? And that it makes you look weird, the way how much you love sports." I was like, "No, man, this is what's making me normal. Let's start talking about badminton tournaments right now." Anyway. But I do now love bowling, which, Rick, you said you're a fan of bowling.
I used to bowl quite a lot. I have not been bowling lately. We went bowling a while ago with my family, and I took out my bowling shoes, and I fell on the bowling alley twice when I was trying, and I couldn't tell if it was because the alley was in such bad disrepair or if my shoes were bad, or I just don't know how to bowl anymore.
They're just old. They're probably old. Like the rubber gets.
Well, actually,
brittle.
yeah. And then towards the end, the whole sole of the shoe fell off. So that's probably what happened. But I kind of felt like I was going to hurt myself bowling.
Well, you can't walk out on the alley.
No. I mean, like the what is it called? The run up or whatever they call it.
Because the alleys, they're oiled. There's a lot of oil on those alleys.
But if they put you on the lane where the kids go, right, it's not going to be a nice, it's going to be full of garbage and everything, and your feet won't slide. You still have to have the
Divots.
approach.
I think the bowling terminology is divots. Right?
Yeah. The approach has to be. I just remember there was a period in my life, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago, where I was bowling a huge amount, and then our father came to visit once, and I went out with the guys I bowled with, and our dad wound up having not bowled for 15 or 20 years, wound up bowling better than all of us. It was humiliating. It was like I had been bowling, once a week or twice a week. I wasn't good, but it was like I had been bowling twice a week for a year or two.
It's because he started bowling in the 50s.
Yeah, exactly.
It was in the water. There's something in the water in the 50s. Anybody who started bowling is amazing.
Did he get in your face?
No. No.
Did he throw a bowling ball at your pinky and break it? My kid will never beat me at bowling. I know that. That's
I won't let that happen. Yeah.
That's a personal commitment. That's a commitment I've made to my son that he'll never beat me at bowling. Although he can.
That's like the great Santini.
Right.
Speaking of movies, the scene in the.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing. Yeah, the basketball. He's out there. You haven't seen that? Oh.
No, I'm writing it down.
Have you seen that? Oh, man. That's Robert Duvall. That's probably Robert Duvall
he's getting his ass whipped by his son. That's the whole premise of that. The middle of that movie.
The son is the guy from Caddyshack, the kid from Caddyshack. Michael, I can't remember his name. Yeah.
Well, there's that sort of moment.
Blythe Danner is the mom, right? Blythe Danner is the mom.
Right.
Gwyneth Paltrow's mom. There's there's that moment when a son beats his dad at something, right? That's sort of a turning point in any young boy's life. And I think now the modern equivalent of that in my household is my son's way better at video games than I am.
Yeah.
There's just a day where he just his comprehension of how games work, I'll never get there. He just immediately can dominate a game. And I'm still trying to figure out where the trigger button is.
You put in the time, I bet you could do it. You just got to really dedicate yourself. Yeah.
So the other thing I've been watching was the comedians. Well, it's a weird thing now. It's Twitch, of course, speaking of video games and people playing, it's the most ridiculous thing watching people play video games. And it's like, oh, this is ridiculous. But then there's this other comedian, Scottish comedian called, I got the Irish comedian, now we're talking about the Scottish comedian, Limmy.
Is there a difference? Sorry.
Yeah, Limmy is the Scottish comedian. He's on Twitch, and he's I think he's been obsessed with video games his whole life, but he's a comedian, had a TV show. It's great, kind of bizarre, surreal comedy show. But now he's just on Twitch playing video games, and he's pretty entertaining. But I can only watch so much. But he's on for hours. It's entertaining. But then after a while, you just have to turn it off. It's like, okay, I'm not going to waste any more time. But one of his things was he's playing a truck simulator. So he's just driving around Europe and just talking, and he's got this really nice setup, with the cameras. But you can only take so much of it, and then he's
and for you, Jim, that's 40 hours. Is that?
What's your limit?
It was just a few. Yeah, I watched some of the kind of longer bits, and then I was like, no, okay, that's enough. But he's very funny.
That reminds me, I watched Convoy. That was another movie I watched.
Oh yeah,
but I kind of half watched it.
Yeah,
is that a good movie?
Peckinpah, right?
Yeah,
Peckinpah, right? Yeah.
Wow,
that's the worst Peckinpah movie, right?
No, Osterman Weekend is the worst.
Okay.
But Convoy is the second worst Peckinpah film.
All right. Nobody dies. Oh, they almost do, though. Yeah, there's that whole scene with the truck going over the bridge, right? Yeah, I forgot about that. So there is kind of a Peckinpah moment with slow motion. And Chris Christopherson going off the bridge in his big rig.
Yeah, the action scenes were few and far between when he got into some of those later films. Although Osterman Weekend is full of death and killing. That I remember all those films are just ridiculous. The latter part of Peckinpah's career. I mean, I think he's just so high on cocaine and drunk that I don't know. I don't want to
It's
judge
just
a guy. I don't know. That's all
picking up the
speculation.
paycheck. Yeah, it's a paycheck movie.
Right. Right. Here's my viewing list. Ip Man 4, I would say, should be found. Extraction should be lost. Beastie Boys.
Is Extraction, is that the movie about the dentist?
No, it's about a special forces soldier who is now a mercenary and goes and finds a little girl. I don't know, something like that. One of the
Okay.
same old plots. I watched Beastie Boys Story. I would say that should be rewound. That was fantastic.
My younger son wants to watch that. Is for some reason really into the Beastie Boys, even though he's 40 or 50 years younger than them.
Yeah, you should. I cried through the whole thing. I mean, the
Wow.
whole film is just about young, stupid guys who, start a band and then kind of work their way through the process of being in a band up through adulthood, and then one of them dies. And like, it's really sad. I mean, it's amazing, and it's shows the progression of like it going from idiocy to artistry, which I enjoyed, but. I didn't like the end. I don't like how it ended up.
Yeah. The ending's not good.
It sort of struck a little too close to home. Then I watched Crazy Rich Asians, which was amazing. Have you guys seen Crazy Rich Asians?
No.
So Crazy Rich Asians is allegedly a rom-com. It's not. It's a beautifully shot, wonderfully scripted film about, or I'm assuming, Asian culture and Asian families, which is how I would describe The Godfather. It's a beautifully shot, wonderfully scripted film about, for the good and the bad, it reminded me of my family, and that
Right.
the gangster shit was all just to keep it kind of humming along, right? And that's why I think it's not a condemnation of Italians. Well, I mean, it actually, in some ways, is a condemnation of Italians, but not Italians because we're all gangsters, but because we're all very difficult to deal with in the family unit. So anyway, that was my big revelation when I watched Crazy Rich Asians.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, we got a couple hums and then an interesting at the end, so we know how Rick settled that internal
I
debate.
haven't seen it. No, I'll check it out.
Oh, it's great. Crazy Rich Asians, you should watch.
Yeah, I haven't heard about that movie. I mean, it wasn't that popular, right? It's not like everybody else in the world has seen it.
Right. Well, if everybody else has seen it, you don't need to, right? 'Cause
Right. Exactly.
what's the point?
Right.
Actually, I watched it as a double feature, and I cried through both films, pretty much all the way through Beastie Boys Story and then Crazy Rich Asians. Good double feature. And you haven't seen either, Rick, so there's your...
Yeah, that's my evening.
That was a
planned out.
Sunday. Yeah, that was a Sunday. I watched The Wicker Man, the Neil LaBute.
Oh yeah. How'd you feel about it?
It was bad. You had said it was it was pretty well shot, but I did feel like there was something cheap about it all the way through the film. And then I didn't see it. I mean, yes, Neil LaBute will go for the misogyny, but I also felt like he was trying to make them more like a hive, where the queen bee sort of makes the calls, and then the
Interesting.
drones are these sort of voiceless men who take orders. So I kind of felt like it could be seen as him making these women out to be evil, or he's just trying to make them an analogy for a hive, which is what they had, like all those bees and stuff.
Yeah, I like that. That might change in the same way the Midsummer kind of interpretation. Boy, does that mean I'm going to have to watch the Wicker Man remake again? Ugh. I actually took out of context. Something happened. Because it was warm for a couple of days before he plunged into the polar vortex again. There were bees, and I had to show my kids the scene where he yells, "Not the bees! Why the bees?" or whatever he yells. That's so
Yeah,
hilarious.
so don't watch it again. It is bad.
Okay.
You were right. And those scenes are awful. Like, I don't like watching him get stung by bees. And he does haul off and beat up several women in the film, so it's not defensible at all from from a feminist standpoint, but I did think that I think the men not speaking was just them being more of a hive, and those guys were the drones. That was the only insightful thing I think about the film.
Yeah, no, it's. I said interesting, but I actually mean that this time.
Thank you. Thank you. We watched Hard Boiled and The Killer, John Woo, Hong Kong action films. You
Yeah.
guys have you've seen those, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which one has the doves?
Well, come on now. So those would be rewound, both of those, I would say. Wicker Man, I would say Lost. The Raid Redemption, I rewound every time. I love that movie.
What is that?
It's a fantastic martial arts film. And The Raid Redemption and then the sequel to it remind me a lot of the Godfather films. Like, particularly the sequel reminds me a lot of Godfather 2. And then the last film I watched was The Decline of Western Civilization Part 2. I haven't watched
Oh,
the
I watched
first
that a
one
while
yet.
ago. Yeah.
Is that
was-
Odin? Odin.
Odin, yeah.
I just remember Rick always saying that. Rick loves that Odin part.
Odin. Odin.
But nobody chanted it, right? It was like he was trying to get it going and nobody would chant. It depressed the hell out of me, that film. That was
There's
a hard
lot.
watch.
Yeah, the thing with the guy from Wasp and I read some stuff about that, about how it kind of ruined his life. Not that he was, but yeah, like making him seem even more like an alcoholic than he was. And then also, I know that she faked the whole thing with Ozzy preparing the breakfast. The shots of the hands, that's all fake. Those are joke cutaways. He wasn't, spilling his orange juice and everything like that. I believe that was faked
Oh, really?
for laughs. Yeah.
So what you're
I
saying
need
is
to-
Ozzy knows how to make breakfast, and she
I'm saying that Penelope Spheris did a little Werner Herzog. So I'm a little more strict about my documentary. I understand, and I'm a student of documentary film and have took a number of classes on them and know how documentary has evolved over the years. But I don't feel like I'm being a fuddy-duddy when you have documentaries and people like Werner Herzog, make up stuff because it's closer to the truth than the actual truth, right? Mm-hmm. So I think Penelope Spheris was guilty of a little of that too.
Rick, what's the next film?
The next film is What's Up, Doc, a 1972 Peter Bogdanovich film that I love.
Which we watched, how long ago? We watched this, what was it? 9 months ago? I don't know. I'm suspicious because, I think someone has been monitoring us, our recordings, because this past weekend, did you see it was like, I think like Mahalia Dargis and A.O. Scott, the New York Times, like, I don't know, it was this weekend. They were like, it was like, hey, everybody, let's watch What's Up, Doc.
Really?
Did you see that? Yes.
Oh, no.
Oh,
really?
No.
I
Man.
forgot. I was going to bring it up before we started talking, but you
I'm
didn't see that.
crestfallen.
How dare they?
So I'm very suspicious. I think we've been.
Yeah.
How would they know?
Someone's been monitoring us.
Well, I think it's good. Then, we're current. I guess that's not the point of this podcast. It's not to be current.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm going to get
Rick is very annoyed. I can tell.
Very annoyed. There's a very famous band who had a hit song, and we had a line in one of our songs.
Yeah, I thought
and
about
it
that too. Right when
It
I
got
heard it.
delayed. Our record got delayed. We were on the same record label too. This is where the conspiracy theory comes in, and it's like our record got delayed, and then this hit song comes out, and I'm like, are we going to have to frickin' re-record our song because we're going to look like copycats? Still makes me angry.
This band doesn't have anything to do with vegetables. They don't have vegetables in their name.
No.
What was the line? Can you share it? What did you do?
No,
Did
it would be obvious. It would be
No,
obvious.
we've moved on from that.
We've moved on. You can tell because I'm not reliving something that happened 25 years ago. Nearly jumped off a bridge. So upset.
Lost and Found and Rewound is fully funded by Lost and Found and Rewound Foundation funds. Lost and Found and Rewound does not use crowdfunding because our listeners have better things to do with their funding. There's no need to post reviews of Lost and Found and Rewound because our listeners have more valuable things to do with their time. In all sincerity, thank you for listening to the show. We truly appreciate it.